I want to say that currency is an important economic issue, and it's also a very important political issue, at least in the current Chinese currency in Washington, D.C. And as I write in the book, it's been overblown as a political issue because it's easy to call attention to. I don't think that the biggest issues in the Chinese economy have been currency. They've been structural issues and issues that more important is to fight to open up the markets there. But the currency is very important. And when I was Treasury Secretary, which goes back 8 and now 9 years, that I made a big point about continuing to reform the currency. I never said to the Chinese, your currency is undervalued, even though it clearly was undervalued. I just talked in terms of why it was important in their best interest, because they were never going to get the economy they deserved or that they wanted to have unless they had a currency that was, where the value was determined by market factors and sent a really, legitimate price signal in the market. And given what they wanted to do, they someday wanted to have a reserve currency. They wanted to move up the value-added chain. All of this made sense. So I made that argument repeatedly. The Chinese leaders agreed with it. They have moved to liberalize their currency regime. And so what had happened over this past 9 years, is the currency had appreciated relative to the dollar, and then as it has stayed stable with the dollar, as they've managed it, the dollar has appreciated. So the Chinese currency has really risen and appreciated relative to most of the rest of the world, to the point where there was a legitimate debate. Some people argued the currency was now overvalued, some still thought it was undervalued. Whenever I got asked a question, I said, I don't know, and we need to get to the point where it's truly a market-determined currency, so we won't be asking that question. But Washington continued, the politicians in Washington hadn't caught up with this and continued to beat on China for currency manipulation and unfair.
In other words, propping up their currency.
They were beating on them for having an undervalued currency, even though they had in essence been propping it up. Okay, so that just shows you what a political issue was. So what happened Monday, which was very significant? Two things happened at once, and I'll try to simplify this. They have a managed currency regime, and they announced a new methodology for managing the currency, where there would be more flexibility, which everyone had been saying we needed to do to get to a market-determined currency, greater rate on market determination, on the market in determining the value, and they were going to be greater variability. And so they announced that. At the same time, they devalued by 2%. And so you had some folks led by the IMF that commended them for this, because this is moving toward greater flexibility, looking more at market factors. And then they received a fair amount of criticism from those that were concerned that this might be the beginning of China seeking to get an unfair trade advantage, a big hot-button political issue in Washington and concern. And this was happening the same time the Chinese economy was continuing to slow down, and there was some very unfavorable economic data that came out. And then the next 2 trading days, which is just through Wednesday, the currency is depreciated by 4%. And so, again, this has heightened the concern. If you look at it in economic terms, with the economy slowing down in China, it shouldn't be a shock that the currency is depreciating. So now, what does it all mean? And I think it means 4 things as I look at it right now. The first thing I will say is that the fundamental issue is what's going on in the economy. And there's no way that China is going to be able to turn around their economy by devaluing the currency. Ultimately, that will be self-defeating. And what all of us should be watching very, very carefully is what happens in the economy because for all those that are sort of hoping that China has problems, they better be careful what they wish for, because if China has real problems there, all of our problems, are going to become greater economic problems. So keep your eye on the economy, number one. Secondly, with regard to currency, to me, this really shows how important it is for China to keep moving with the reforms so we get to a currency that really is market determined. So we're not going through all of this uncertainty about the currency. China is an anomaly. That there are many developing countries that don't have market-determined currencies, but there are none that are the world's second biggest economy and that are integrated into the trading system but not into the financial system. So they really need to speed that up, and that is very important. Thirdly, in terms of the immediate term, it is very important that as China manages this currency, they do it very responsibly and prudently. This is in their best interest and the best interest of the rest of the world. And I believe that the leaders understand that, and I take some comfort from the fact that the central bank, PBOC, has been quoted as saying that they believe it's important that the renminbi the value be maintained at a basically stable level. So that was the language they used.
So it'll stay within a 2% range.
Well, I don't know. They haven't been clear what they've said. They devalued 2%. It's now 4% in the first 3 days. Market forces are currencies. This has roiled markets around the world, equity markets, currency markets, commodity markets, because there's two things going on at once here. There's the overriding issue, what's going on in the Chinese economy. It's slowing down markedly. What does that mean for commodities markets around the world? What does it mean for economic growth? And then there's what is going to happen with the currency. And so I just think it is very much in China's interest. And again, they've said that, basically stable. The fourth and the last point I make is you can bet everything involving China seems to be a big political issue. And you can bet if this was a big political issue, currency manipulation, so-called in Washington, when the renminbi was being held up relative to the global currencies, while others are driving their currency down, you can imagine it's going to be an even bigger political issue today.